Thank you, Phyllis. Good morning, Unity of Bloomington. Good morning, friends. Thank you for being here. And thanks to those of you joining us online, wherever, whenever you are welcome. I'm Mary Ellen May. It's my delight to be your service leader today. And I'd like to invite you to join me in speaking this affirmation together. We are a heart-centered community seeking spiritual awakening and transformation by deepening our connections with God, self, and others. And now let's sing together our welcome song, You Can Stand or Sit.
I am the thinker who thinks the thought that changes the things that shape my life. I am the thinker who thinks the thought I have the power to change my life. If you ask me who am I am wisdom, I am light. I am more than meets the eye. I cannot be defined. I am the thinker who thinks the thought that changes the things that shape my life. I am the thinker who thinks the thought I have the power to change my life. I can choose to be the light that brightens someone's darkest night. I'm so much more than meets the eye. I cannot be defined. The thought that changes the shapes that shapes my life. I am the thinker who thinks the thought I have the power to change my life. I am the thinker who thinks the thought that changes the things that shape my life. I am the thinker who thinks the thought I have the power to change my life. I have the power to change my life. I have the power to change my life.
Please be seated. And now, join me in speaking our transition affirmation together. Unity of Bloomington is generating an abundant future in expansive alignment with Spirit. We lean deeply into truth principles, live our faith, and trust the process. Our greatest desire is to be abundant and attract those who value spiritual growth, including our next minister.
If it's to be, to be, it's up to me. If I seek the truth, let me speak the truth. If I'm lost in doubt, let me believe. I know I can be the change I want to see. So if it's to be, if it's to be, if it's to be, it's up to me. If I'm tired and stressed, let me stop and rest. If I'm feeling hurt, let me forgive. I know I can be the change I want to see. So if it's to be, if it's to be, if it's to be, it's up to me. If I dream of peace, let me be the peace. When I start from love, I am love. needs to be. You know it's up to me.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to invite our special guests, Glenda and Bill Breeden, to the stage to sing an original song for us. Carry Love in Your Heart.
Hello, everybody. I'm Glenda. This is Bill.
They'd never guess that. I mean,
So I wrote this song, Carry Love in Your Heart, several years ago after visiting a friend of mine who was in prison. His name's Philip Stroud. And he was talking about prison life and how when he goes out from his cell, he had to he never knew what was going to be around the corner. It can be just as dangerous for the people who are in prison as it is for the guards, or, you know, there's danger sometimes. And so he said he just tried to carry love wherever he went. He tried to carry that sense of peace throughout, you know, when he was walking at the prison. So I wrote this song after visiting him, and I think it applies to all of us. I do motions with it. If you want to do the motions, please feel free to. Or if you want to clap your hands, you may do that. So whatever you feel like doing, okay? And the three verse parts are very simple. There's a chorus in between that's a little more complicated.
do we have the
So-
words? Did you send the words?
What?
Did you send the words? Have we sent?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, but the words are easy. You
Yeah, the
won't
words
have
are
any
easy.
trouble with them.
It's
They're
easy.
But the chorus part is a little bit more complicated. So you can try it if you want, you know. I
Yeah.
know I make mistakes all the time, so I'm good with people making
She
making
lives with me.
mistakes. Yes,
I mean,
yes. But that wasn't a
Go
mistake.
figure. Oh, what?
Okay.
We worked it out. Carry love in your heart, in your hands, in your mind. Carry love every step that you take. Pass it on, pass it on, pass it all around the table. Carry love and give it away. Carry joy in your heart, in your mind. Carry joy every step that you take. Pass it out, pass it on, pass it all around the table. Carry love and give it away.
Pass it out and watch it multiply just like the loaves and fishes. Pass it on and watch it change the world like the smile of a child. Pass it all around the table to your family, friends, and strangers. Pass it all around the world and watch it grow.
Carry love in your heart, in your hands, in your mind. Carry peace every change that you take. Pass it out, pass it on, pass it all around the table. Carry peace every step in the day.
Pass it out and watch it multiply just like the loaves and fishes. Pass it on and watch it change the world like the smile of a child. Pass it all around the table to your family, friends, and strangers. Pass it all around the world and watch it grow.
Carry love in your heart, in your hands, in your mind.
Carry
Love every step that you take. Pass it out, pass it on, pass it all around the table. Carry love and bear it away. Carry love and carry it away. Carry love and give it away.
Thank you so much. It's my honor
fast.
to reintroduce today's speaker. The Reverend Bill Breeden started his ministry as a tent revival preacher at the age of 15. After receiving his Master's of Divinity from a Nazarene seminary, he left the evangelical church and joined the Disciples of Christ in the early 1970s. During the 1980s, he and his family lived in a teepee in Brown County. A consummate social activist, Reverend Bill was banned from the Naval Weapons Station Crane for carrying a peace sign during a grand opening 40 years ago. He also spent 4 days in an Indiana jail for stealing and ransoming a street sign that honored a national security advisor who, in his opinion, lied to the American people. Glenda, his wife of 54 years, has been a stalwart support throughout his life of advocating for those who are marginalized. Retired from 13 years as co-minister of Bloomington Unitarian Universalist Church, Reverend Bill now is a minister of record for federal death row inmates. Please join me in welcoming the Reverend Bill Breeden and Tana McElhinney.
Okay, Bill.
Okay.
Good to see you today. Thanks for being here.
It's good to be here. This is a beautiful space. I mean, it just makes you feel good to be here. It's just, y'all have done a wonderful thing here. It's just beautiful.
Okay, I think everybody knows you're a retired Unitarian minister. And from the newsletter, they know the title of our talk. That's what are we going to do with it? What do we do with our errors?
Yeah.
And I got to tell the audience that I'm probably going to be interrupting you on occasion, so.
Yeah, don't hesitate.
Okay. All right. I was going to give this long metaphysical interpretation of the creation story in the Bible, but thankfully you have a better story. So would you please tell that?
Well, every culture has their own mythology about how we began all this nonsense. And one of them that I like the best, I think, is the Hopi mythology of their coming out of the bowels of the earth. And I've been out to the Black Mesa years ago and visited the site where they say they emerged from the bowels of the earth on the Black Mesa. And their guide that brought them from the bowels of the earth to live on the surface, the last instruction they were given was go onto the surface of the earth and discover what it means to be a human being. And that's pretty much all I'm about. I want to know what it means to be a human being. And my prison ministry has helped me figure that out a lot. So that's, to me, that's the most important question. What's it mean to be a human? And how do I become human as I learn to live?
That's a lot better than my metaphysical interpretation.
Well, you know, we talked also about the Hopi questions that they used to teach their children. There are 4 questions. One of them is, who am I? Second is, where did I come from? The third is, where am I going? And the last one is, why am I here? And those 4 questions, I think, are the questions that help them determine what it means to be human. And it's interesting that you really can't answer that first one until you answer the following 3. So it's a complete education or experience to live with those 4 questions. Who am I? Where did I come from? Where am I going? And why am I here?
All right, you've been doing some interesting prison work, and some of it's called being a minister of record. Can you please tell me how you got into this work?
Sure.
What is a minister of record?
Well, a minister of record, when a prisoner goes into any facility, state or federal, they fill out all kinds of papers about themselves, and one of them is their religious affiliation. And so if you sign on to a Baptist, then you can get a Baptist minister of record who can come visit you monthly, sometimes twice a month, and be your counselor. And a minister of record is also, that's true of prisoners in the general population, but especially on death row, a minister is the only person who can go in the death chamber with a man or a woman being executed. And minister of record, I began doing this work because a man wrote me from prison. He got my name from another prisoner who had heard about my prison stuff, and he asked me to become his minister of record. And I told him, you know, I'd be happy to try to do that. He wanted to give up his appeals and be executed because the solitary confinement was driving him crazy. And he'd tried to kill himself a couple of times and failed at that, so he was going to give up his appeals and ask for an execution date. I said, look, I'm a Unitarian Universalist.
And I said, it's going to take me a while to get into federal prison because most of prison ministry, prison chaplains are dominated by two groups. One is the Roman Catholic and the other is fundamentalism. And so it took me quite a while to get in, and I won't describe that thing, but I told him, he said, I want to die. I'm not afraid of dying, I'm afraid of hell. And he was raised in a very violent home in West Virginia, Pentecostal, and he was afraid of going to hell. And so I said, I think I can get you over your fear of hell. It's not a problem, but stay alive till we can talk. And so when I first met him and walked in, you talked through glass in those days. And finally, we sued last year and got the right for contact visitation with the guys on death row. But for years, I've only been able to talk to him through glass. And he came in and he said, I'm not afraid of dying. I'm just afraid of going to hell. I said, where do you think you are? I said, this is the worst hell you will ever face. And we spent a long time, but he's not afraid of hell anymore. And he's still alive. They've spent a lot of money keeping him alive through his attempts to kill himself. But so the minister of record is really, they also call them spiritual advisors, but you have to go through some definite, filters to get in. And I've been visiting him every month, sometimes twice, not often, but at least once a month for about 16 years.
And where is he?
Federal death row is in Terre Haute, Indiana. And the interesting thing about it being in Terre Haute is it's not like state death row. Most of your persons on state death row, their families are in the state of Indiana, so it's easier for them to visit, where these people from all over the country and all over the world, actually, we have some non-Americans on federal death row. And so their families rarely come, in fact, almost never. And so basically, that's the thing about the federal death row. These people are in solitary confinement 23 and a half hours a day for a long time.
And what does solitary confinement look like?
It looks like about a 7 by 10 cell with a window that's darkened that you can't see out. One of the reasons I got into this is because I'd been in solitary twice for short terms, thankfully. And at one time, it was when we were living in a teepee, the first time it had happened. And so to go from a teepee in the woods to a 6 by 10 cell with just a little slot in the door, I literally, in a jail where I knew the sheriff since I was knee-high to a duck, I literally overnight thought they were gassing me. I became so paranoid. And that's why many young people commit suicide when they go because teenagers, when they go to a jail, they automatically put them in isolation and solitary for their own protection. But usually when teenagers commit suicide in a jail, it's in their first night. And the solitary confinement's hell. Leo Tolstoy wrote in his book, The Kingdom of God is Within You, which I recommend to everybody. In 1890s he wrote it, I think. And it's the last chapter is really the main chapter of the book. But he talks in there about going to an exhibition of torture, human torture, in St. Petersburg in 1893. And he said the number one means of torture is a solitary cell. And in the United States, as we sit here right now, there are 70,000 people in solitary confinement cells across this nation. Every day, every hour of every day.
Whew. Well, last week, Dan, sitting over there in the choir, he talked about his mother and his grandmother, how they shaped him. And I call that programming.
Mm.
I feel that I was poorly programmed by my older and tired parents. And I would like to release some of those errors that I have incurred. Tell me about the prisoners you work with and how they deal with their errors. And also, what kind of programming did they receive? And specifically, I'd like for you to talk about Corey.
Corey Johnson. I was during the Trump bar murder spree where they killed 13 people in less than 2 years, more than any American president outside of wartime. And we were protesting those executions, as we have all executions for many years, both in the state of Indiana, which thankfully we haven't had any for a long time, and on federal death row. And so when there were only 3 left to be executed in that murder spree, I asked a lawyer to find out if they all had ministers, because only a minister can go into the death chamber with you. And indeed, they did not. And I drafted a friend of mine from the Muslim community, Yusuf Nur, who had already done one of that spree when I'd been called and asked to find a Sunni Muslim minister to be a minister to a man who was executed in the summer before my time. But, they wanted a Sunni minister, a Sunni Muslim. And so the federal government brought this police chaplain from Indianapolis who was a Sunni Muslim. And he went in to visit this guy on death row, and the guy says, I don't want a police chaplain as my minister. You know, it's just too government. So he refuses him. So they called me and asked me, and then I drafted Yusuf Nur. And in the last 3, he agreed to go again with a Muslim person, and Sister Barbara Batista took the woman who was executed, and I got Corey Johnson. And I found out when his lawyer called me and said, would you be willing to be his minister? And I said, yes. And he had been in solitary confinement for 29 years without a visitor. Without a visitor for 29 years. Without seeing the night sky for 29 years. That to me is just beyond belief. He was 6'7". He was abandoned at the age of 12 by his mother, who was addicted to heroin. And he ended up in gangs, in a gang war in Richmond, Virginia. And when you're in a gang war, you kill people. And he and 2 other people were convicted of 7 murders in that gang war. When I first met him, to tell you about the integrity of this guy, 19 years old when he was convicted of and condemned to death. And there's actually a video television news story about the day of his sentencing hearing. A bunch of children from a middle school, a black middle school in Richmond, were brought to the court that day just to watch court work. It's one of those civics classes or something. I don't think the judge expected him to be there. I don't think he would have allowed it during a death sentence, but it happened. And when Corey, at 19, was sentenced to death, the judge says, do you have anything you want to say? And Corey said, yes, I want to speak to these children. He said, don't follow my path. Don't live the way I've lived, because this is where it ends. And to have the wherewithal to speak to children when you've just been told you're going to be executed someday, it kind of blew my mind, because this is a man who couldn't read, couldn't write. He was dyslexic and was never treated or never taught to read or write. He was severely mentally impaired. And yet he had the wherewithal to speak to these children. And there's a film, a news crew was outside to interview the kids after they come out of class, and all these children, black children, said, that black man in there, he's like us. We listen to him. And so the lawyer from D.C. talked to Corey and said, look, I have a minister who's willing to be your minister and go with you to the death row. He said, all you have to do is get your religious preference paper back, because he had put no religion on his religious preference, and so he'd never had a minister. He said, I can't do that. He said, you get that paper back and you put on there Unitarian Universalist. And Corey said, I can't do that. And the lawyer said, why can't you do that, Corey? And he said, well, it'd be a lie. He said, I can't tell a lie. And the lawyer said, Corey, these people are going to kill you. He said, you can tell this little lie. He said, I think it'll help you to have somebody be with you. And he did, and it was a gift to me. He was one of the most remarkable human beings I've ever met. In 29 years, he was never written up by a guard for any infraction. No one had ever heard him raise his voice. They called him the gentle giant on the row. And it devastated the row when he was executed. And I was within 6 feet of him. We've also sued the federal government to have the right of touching the person when they're executed. But they have not given us that one yet. Well, if they come up with an execution date, we withdrew the suit. Without prejudice means we can file it again immediately if there's an execution date. So yeah, being a minister on death row has changed my life immensely. I can't imagine the last 16 years without doing that. You know, Chad Fulks, a man I have seen for 16 years, was a fetal alcohol syndrome infant. It means frontal lobe damage, which is where we understand circumstances. He was in a very violent home. His neighbors testified that at the age of 6, he was sleeping under the porch of his house because he was being abused by his father. And he was in some terrible, he committed some terrible crimes. But he's a healed person today over this last 16 years. And in fact, his wife, who they were married before he came to prison, of course, wanted to come to visit. And so she did. And I met with her and had dinner with her after they met. She said, it wasn't as hard as I thought it'd be. He was very mean to me when we were married, and he's such a changed person. And he said, I forgave him. And Chad told me the next day I saw him after she was there, he said, she forgave me, and I forgive myself. And they both feel like human beings. In fact, she's there this week again. After 16 years of not seeing him, she came back this week. And in Corey Johnson's case, I had raised the money to bring his family. I went on Facebook and raised $7,000 in less than 2 weeks to bring his family members from New York and Georgia to visit him because they'd never been able to in 29 years. And the lawyer said, we'll pay that, you keep the money. So I gave it to Sisters of Providence, and we have a program called the Corey Johnson Visitation Program, because I told Corey that when we talked, I had about 30 hours with him before he was executed. And I told him that I shared with him the African mythology that you don't die until your name is forgotten. And I said, I'm going to make sure your name is never forgotten, Corey. And he was just one of the most wonderful human beings I've ever met. I've been fortunate to have a small dinner with the Dalai Lama and a few people, and with Bishop Tutu one time we met years ago. And when I walked into the presence of Corey Johnson, that's the kind of human being I felt like I was with.
Well, tell me, how did he deal with all those years in solitude?
You know, it's hard for me to say that. I don't know how he did it. Being unable to read or write, I mean, his writing skill was maybe a second or third grade in terms of spelling. I had to write his last words he dictated to me on the morning of the execution, and then they didn't allow me to read them. But at the same, he just, I don't know how he did that. It's a miracle. He was one of the sweetest men I've ever known.
So what magic wand do we have to deal with our errors?
Well, I think forgiveness of ourselves. You know, all of us screw up. And I think the older I get, the simpler it gets for me. I mean, I looking back on all the stupid things I've done in my life is kind of a terrible thing to do. So what I've come to believe is that I own only one thing that I own, and that's the breath that I just took. And I can't keep it or I'm going to die, so I have to give it back. And I want to give it back in love. And I think that's the way we do for ourselves. You know, the Dalai Lama said there's 2 days on which you can do absolutely nothing. One is called yesterday, the other is called tomorrow. So the only thing you have is now. That's what you have. And years ago, down in Sanborn, Indiana, some kids from my high school who had enough money to have hot rods took their hot rods over to Sanborn, Indiana, and were burning up their tires on the road, you know what kids do. And this old man come out of the house that they were doing it in front of him, just started cussing them, and they start flipping him off and cussing. They were cussing each other back and forth, and the old man dropped dead. Now, they didn't mean that. And he didn't want to die with his last voice cursing someone. I'm sure if you'd asked him ahead of time, no, that's not the way I want to die. But they only owned their last breath. And when I saw that story and think about that story of that happening so many years ago, I don't want my last breath to go in anger. I don't want it to go in regret. I don't want it to go in hate and all that. I want it to be in love. And what that does for me is it makes the most important person in my life is the person standing right in front of me whether it's behind bars or whether it's walking down the street, they might have received my last breath. I don't want me to be flipping somebody off and cursing them and then all of a sudden drop dead in front of them. That'd be a hell of a way for my last breath to go. So what I try to do is understand that this is a breath I have, and how I give it back is all that matters. And I can't give it back in regret and in hate and stuff like that. You give it back in love, because love's the only thing that works.
You have a current prisoner whose name is Chad, and you told me about some of the changes that have happened in him lately, his buttons. Can you describe that?
When I first met Chad, as I told you, first we dealt with hell. But Chad, they had to bring him out in shackles and cuffs, not just cuffs. And you could hear him coming down the hall, when I'm waiting on him to come into his side of the visiting room. You could hear him carrying on like crazy, giving them all kinds of problems. And then he'd come into my room and he'd be so shaking and he's so angry. And so one day when he came in like that, he sat down and I said, "Man, Chad, where'd you get all those buttons?" He said, "What are you talking about? I don't have any buttons." I said, "You got buttons all over you, man." I said, "Those guys out there, they push your button and Chad goes bat's ass crazy. He just goes nuts, and they really get off on that, Chad." I said, "If you turn those buttons off, you'll be amazed at how it changes your life." And we all have buttons. We have things that get under our skin and things that irritate us. And, if we learn to turn those things off and take in a breath and think in the back of my mind, how am I going to give it back? Then I think it makes us more calm, more peaceful. And Chad came in a month later. I visit him every month. A few times I've been twice a month, but I try to avoid that. It's exhausting. But he came in the next month. They brought him in just cuffs, and he gets the cuffs off and comes in and sits down and he's smiling. And I said, "Wow, Chad, you're looking pretty good. What happened?" He said, "I turned the buttons off." And he's been, since then, he's kept them off most of the time. He still has days when he's tried to kill himself twice since I've been seeing him. And they spend a lot of money to keep him alive so they can pull him out and kill him someday. But he's just a person he's reading books for the first time in his life. That's all he does is read. I taught him early on to meditate on a dot on the wall. I said, take a pen and just make a dot and just stare at that and try to calm yourself. And he's used that over the years to help him. And he's a much different person than I met 16 years ago.
That's a long time.
It is a long time, yeah. People spend many, many years on death row.
All right. In summary, we all have programming. Do we continue through our life with it? Or do we dismantle what isn't serving us and the universe?
Yeah, well, I think it begins with forgiving the programmer. Whether it's God or your parents or whoever it is, forgive the programmer. They did their best, I believe that. I think damaged people damage others with the programming. That's all it is to it. And I think we need to look back and say, and give them the benefit of the doubt. And obviously you have some, mentally ill people and other people who really damage children. There's no question about that. But even those children that I've met over the years, and Chad's certainly one of them, when he took the time to think about it, he was able to forgive his parents, forgive his father. His father has never come to visit him on a death row. His family has never, I actually take that back. His mother did come once. I helped get a van, and a lawyer helped transport her from West Virginia, and she came once. But Chad has forgiven his dad, and has forgiven, I think he's forgiven his own past. And so he's a very different person now after 16 years. And the guards, they appreciate it.
Someone once said, life is not a roll of the dice. So just like you said, the past is gone, the future hasn't happened yet. So we're really free of both of those. The only error is not seeing our divine selves.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much, Bill and Glenda.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here. Bless you all. You have a sacred space and good people.
Relax, let go, release and surrender. I relax, let go, release and surrender. I relax, let go, release and surrender. I relax, let go, release and surrender.
Let's consider an overview of life. We are born, and the first 12 years of our life, we are programmed by our parents. Rules, constraints. Then our teen years, we say no. In our 20s and 30s, we try to fit in, try to look right. We have sex hormones flowing. In our 30s, 40s, 50s, the career, the job is most important. Still some hormones. In our 60s, is this job, is this career really important? In our 70s, what is life for? What meaning does it have? In our 80s, our friends are dying. Health becomes very important. Maybe there's some contentment. In our 90s, the friends are gone. Health is all-consuming. We make it to 100. Who knows? We'll probably release this body, this flesh and bones body. So, we change what we can during our lifetime and learn to love.
Relax, let go, release and surrender. I relax, let go, release and surrender. I relax, let go, release and surrender. I relax, let go, release and surrender.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you, Bill and Glenda, for being here, for your beautiful gift to us today. Thank you so much. So now we prepare to show our gratitude for what we continue to receive. There are several ways to contribute to Unity of Bloomington. Checks or cash are always welcome, or you can use the text to give button on the screen or the donate button on the website. As the offering bags are passed, you may want to bless the bags and their contents. If you are new to us, please fill out one of the blue visitor forms in the pocket of the chair in front of you with your first impressions. Prayer request forms are also available in the pocket. Both of these forms may be dropped into the offering bag as it is passed. And greeters, thank you. If you want to join me in speaking our abundance affirmation together. I am an abundant being in an abundant universe. I am not dependent on people or situations for my good. God is the source of my supply. I always have something to give, and I consistently give it. I expect the best, I give my best, and I now attract the best in every experience.
The offering song is new for us, so we're going to sing the first verse through. The music team's going to sing the first verse through. It's very short, and then we're going to start all over again, and you can sing all 3 verses with us.
Don't lose heart. We were made for these times. Don't lose heart. We were made for these times. Don't lose heart. We were made for these times. Show your soul, it shines like gold in these dark times.
Start at the beginning. Sing with us.
Don't lose heart. We were made for these times. Don't lose heart. We were made for these times. Don't lose heart. We were made for these times. Show your soul, it shines like gold in these dark times. Don't lose hope. We were made for these times. Don't lose hope. We were made for these times. Don't lose hope. We were made for these times. Show your soul, it shines like gold in these dark times. Don't give up. We were made for these times. Don't give up. We were made for these times. Don't give up. We were made for these times. Show your soul, it shines like gold in these dark times. Show your soul, it shines like gold in these dark times.
Thank you, greeters, and thank you, everyone, for your contributions. I'd like to invite you to join me in speaking our offering blessing together. Divine love flowing through me blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive, and I am grateful. Just a few announcements. Newcomers Connect. The next Newcomers Connect gathering, for those of you who are new to Unity and or Unity of Bloomington, you're invited to gather today. Immediately after service, right here in this corner of the chapel, Mary Ann Williams will lead a get-together to give you more information about the overall Unity Worldwide movement and Unity of Bloomington in particular. And it's summertime. If you don't believe me, step outside. There's some summer changes. Saturday morning yoga group will be on hiatus until August 10th. The choir will take a break until September, but people are always welcome to join the music team at 9:30 on Sunday mornings to run through music and help lead the singing. And the Sunday evening drumming and dance group now meets outdoors at Cars Farm Park instead of in our chapel until the fall. This summer, we also could really use more volunteers as people go on vacation and take time off. So we need people to fill in for greeters, the music team, or to provide food for our social hour. And we'd really especially appreciate help with childcare, and particularly in June. So if you are going to be here this summer, please consider volunteering to help with what needs to be done. You can see John Acapio if you'd like to volunteer. Our upcoming speakers. On May 26th, our very own Ron Masters, the title of his talk is Know Your Truth by Heart. On June 2nd, Reverend Stephanie Say, and her title is The Joy of Chaos. On June 9th, our ministerial candidate, Reverend Catherine Breaux, will have her weekend visit. And on June 16th, our other Reverend Manasa Gaban will have her weekend visit. June 23rd, our very own Joni Spain, and on June 30th, we'll have an all-music Sunday with Phyllis and Angela Gabriel as well.
Actually, it's just Angela.
Just Angela. Phyllis will be gone. Yay. All right, so now please join me in speaking our prayer for protection together. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. Let's join together to sing our closing song, Let There Be Peace on Earth.